بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, believing brother and sisters. I welcome you all to another of our monthly lecture series. Today we have returning with us our beloved sister Masudah Muhammad, and as we are in the month of May, which is also Mental Health Awareness Month, she is going to enlighten us on that topic. So let's sit back and enjoy, and feel free to post the questions in the chat, or there's an icon to raise your hand and she will answer you as best as she can, inshallah. So I don't want to waste any more time, and I hand over the floor to our beloved sister Masudah Muhammad. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Walaikum assalam, and thank you for the opportunity again, Brother Richford. Today, let me share my my screen. Just a sec. Today we're going to have an engaging conversation on mental health. And why I say conversation is because I really want your opinions, and I want you to engage and not just listen to the content, but also relate it and ask any questions that you want, because this is how we learn. And this is a moment to learn about how, mental health impacts us all. So it doesn't just impact us. We are a part of families and communities. So the awareness will really help us to bridge the gap between mental health and our own interpretation of it, as well as our community and families. So that is why it's awareness in Muslim communities, but it's also to break the silence. Mental health has been tabooed throughout the Caribbean and not just in Islamic communities. And because of the taboo topic, we sometimes shy away from mental health topics, right? But it is important for us to have these types of dialogues so that we can bring awareness. So thanks again for the opportunity, and I hope that we can have a fun time learning about the different types of mental health disorders and the impacts of mental health on us. So I'll just go through an overview of what today's presentation might possibly look like. I'm going to go through an overview of mental health, why we're even here learning about mental health, defining mental health and mental ill health and the difference, types of mental health disorders, mental health in the Islamic community, what are some of the myths and facts that we are exposed to, what are some of the coping strategies we can implement in our daily lives, and I'm going to give you a strategy that you can use today, right? And stress management techniques, and of course, a package with free resources, free mental health resources, so that you're able to cope and to continue to cope, and not just a one-time coping kit, all right? So this is some of the statistical facts on mental health. Mental health impacts approximately 970 million persons worldwide, and this is 1 in 8 persons. These persons live with a mental health disorder. Over 700,000 people die from, I can't use the word just now, let me just end this, I had on a live, right, die from suicide each year. So that is 1 person every 40 seconds. That means throughout this presentation, we would have had quite a number of persons dying from suicide, either suicide ideation, attempts, or suicide or having suicidal behavioral patterns, right? So this is where they think about it. They would have thought through the process, but it didn't go through with the suicide attempts. 75% of persons with mental health conditions in low and middle income countries receive no treatment at all. So they are not exposed to mental health professionals or have no access to mental health support, depending on their geographic location and their socioeconomic status. which is really something to not be too happy about, right? We have an increase in teen mental health, especially anxiety and depression, and there has been a correlation or a link to social media. So if a teen's brain is still on that developmental journey, so someone who is below the age of 25, um, their brain is still developing because your brain develops at 25 years old. So you're just taking in that social media content can really affect your brain. And if they spend more than 3 hours per day on social media, they are significantly at risk for mental health problems. So this is really an issue that we need to discuss, right? Before we delve into mental health and what it is about, let's see how we are impacted or if we are impacted at all. So we're going to play a game, and the name of the game is put your finger down. So if any of these sentences apply to your life currently, put a finger down. So you have your 10 fingers up, and I want you to put your finger down. If any of this applies to you, you can either unmute your mic and say, or put it in the comment section, right? So let's start. Put a finger down if you have been feeling emotionally drained and depleted. You're just tired, right? Emotionally drained and depleted. Put a finger down if you have noticed a decrease in empathy. So empathy is our ability to relate to others, to put ourselves in someone else's shoes. If you notice you have a decrease in empathy and a sense of emotional numbness or detachment, put a finger down, right? Put a finger down if you got increased irritability, you're just agitated, and it's like you can't take it no more, right? And a heightened sensitivity to minor stressors. So something stressed you out and you're really agitated about it. Put a finger down if you're having trouble falling or staying asleep, eating, sleeping, bathing. Personal hygiene is very much linked to poor mental health management. So if this applies to you, put a finger down. Put a finger down if you're having physical symptoms like headache, backache, neckache, digestive issues, muscle ache, right? Put a finger down. Put a finger down if you notice that you have negative outlooks on work or life in general, or a feeling of isolation or loneliness. You just want to be by yourself. If this applies to you, put a finger down. If you have had difficulties concentrating, put a finger down. If you have been feeling tired or drained recently, or overwhelmed, or you're just overly exhausted, put a finger down. If you're feeling you're feeling loss of motivation or enthusiasm about your work or life in general, you're just not feeling excited about life, right? And lastly, if you notice that you're avoiding people or responsibilities or using distractions like wasting time on social media, you're just scrolling, you're procrastinating, put a finger down. How much fingers we have? Can we get some comments in the chat? Is it that your 10 fingers was down? You had 5 fingers down? How much fingers you had down? You can unmute your mic.
Although I had my Salaam alaikum, although I had
Alcohol
my
salam.
some fingers down, I don't think I feel it's not really a stress level. It's just because I'm not empathetic with criminals, and I just lose it with that, with crime.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but the problem with sleeping, I always had that because I always getting up. I have to, like when you go and sleep and you have to get up early.
Yeah.
I don't want to miss my tajud, so every minute I getting up and checking my time.
Mm-hmm.
And when I get up, I can't go back and sleep. Right.
Mm-hmm. But it's not a
The
problem
pains I'm
here.
feeling is the pains I feel in is old age.
So
The
it is
back
not
pain and the
as
this pain and
so it's not
I
associated
don't
with
I'm not
stress.
linking it. I'm not linking it to stress.
Mm-hmm.
These things are relatable. And this is what
Mm-hmm.
some people that might be misled about that too, could be misled and think they you know,
Yeah.
because they may not
Exactly.
have, like me, I don't really feel the stress because I retired and I really do, I try my very But these things that pointers that you have here,
Mm-hmm.
right, are relatable in everyday life. It's a people, as far as but it may not
Mm-hmm.
necessarily be because you're depressed, or at least this is how I see it.
Yeah. And sometimes we might be stressed out, but we're not linking it to stress. We think that we coping. We
Mm-hmm.
think that we're able to manage life, but we're stressed out, but we are not associating our lack of sleep or lack of energy, and we're not linking it to stress. Because this is linked to not just stress, but there's another word that this is linked to. So if it applies to you, or how much applied? All? Sis? You hearing me?
My mic was muted, sorry.
That's
Um,
it.
well, I don't know, maybe about 4 or 5, but I wasn't writing fast enough, But you know,
Mhm.
and I was saying it, because as you're saying it, I don't feel as though it is stress related because I feel tired too.
Mhm.
But it's sometimes I as what I tell you, it's not, but I'm not stressed. I don't feel stressed.
You don't feel stressed, but you do feel tired. And
Yeah,
some of it apply like about 5 out of the 10.
probably, yeah. The problem to sleep, the headache, and the back pain is. I know the problem with the back pain is not just a regular, thing. The, you have a list of the thing, a point list, because I can't remember all as a right. But I mean, I was relating to most of them. You know.
Yeah. Yeah, I have a stress test that you can do to see how much stress if you're even under stress,
Mm-hmm.
right? But this is just a test to see now if we even
Yeah.
have stress in your room. How is our mental health coping skills in your room right now,
Mm-hmm.
right? And
Mm-hmm.
if you had up all your hands, if you had up all your fingers, then it lead to burnout. So this is some of the symptoms of burnout,
Mm-hmm.
right? And sometimes we might be burnout and we don't know we burnout because we are accustomed living and having these high levels of stress. And this is just our normal way of functioning.
Mm-hmm.
For some persons, it's difficult for them to cope with it, because burnout is really a complete it's mental, physical, and emotional exhaustion. So you're just overly tired, right? You're mentally tired, you're physically tired. So that is why you'll get the backache and the neck ache because your body just physically drawn out and
Mm-hmm.
emotionally tired. And that is why you can't have empathy or relate to other people because you're just emotionally exhausted. It's not that you lack empathy or you don't care about people or you're just
I'm very,
irritated.
I feel it for people, right? The only
Mm.
thing, no, the only, the only lack of empathy is for criminals.
Yes, and I think that we should have some type of this, annoyance or lack of empathy for them, which is normal. I would say that that is a normal response or a common response to persons who harm us and society,
Mm-hmm.
right? So it doesn't really apply in this case, right?
Mm-hmm.
So some of us, we would have had some kind of symptom that says that we may need some additional rest or that we're not managing or coping in one dimension of our lives. And sometimes when we pay attention to our body responds to the world around us in different ways. And your body will tell you that you're stressed out, that you're not coping good, that you need to rest, that you need to relax. Our body sends out those signals as a
Mm-hmm.
way to maintain its homeostasis or its balance, right? And this is why we will feel, a little overwhelmed, and then when we start to feel overwhelmed, then we have our coping mechanisms that we can use, right? I saw someone put in a chat that is Vika, right? Immediately, and it puts them in a safe zone mentally. So everybody works and cope with life very differently. So that brings me into the topic of what is mental health? When we hear all these different things about mental exhaustion, physical exhaustion, what do you think is, like, just give an idea of what you think mental health is in terms of the definition. Anybody can say. Welcome, Assalam.
A lack of balance in your thoughts, so it's just like, you're not thinking cohesively.
Nice. Yes, I actually like that. It's a lack of balance in your thought, lack of mental cohesion. Excellent. It's actually a really good definition. Anybody else have a definition? There's no B's or C's in this class. Everybody gets an A's, right? So you can feel free to say what you think mental health is or what it means to you. All right, so I will give the someone who's going to comment.
Some people might think that being angry is not a state of but if they get angry easily or irritated at every little thing, it could be a pointer, like a sign that something, not stable, something with the emotions or whatever.
True. That is true. And that was actually one of the sentences. Irritability. You're easily triggered by either words or behavior. Somebody says something, you're triggered about that. And this says a lot about your management of your mental health. It's okay to have a mental health disorder, but what happens is poor management of the mental health disorder that creates some maladaptive responses, meaning that you're not adapting to your circumstances in a positive way, right? So it's not the fact that you have a mental health disorder, but it's poor management of it, right? So let's look at the definition of mental health. So mental health is essentially our emotional, psychological, and social well-being. This is holistic health. Mental health is not just about your mind, it's about your entire body. It's what we call the central nervous system. It's your mind, your brain that is attached to your spinal cord and all your nerve endings. So essentially, your mind is a body. So when we say mental health, we're talking about holistic health and not just your brain. Because if you are unable to manage your thoughts, then this can lead to poor mental health management. And when I say thoughts, I don't just mean your conscious thoughts. I mean your unconscious thoughts as well, right? So if you're in a state of mental well-being, mental wellness, this is when you're able to cope with the stressors of life. And we understand that life has a lot of stressors that we either prepare for or we don't prepare for, like a divorce, or we lost our home, or we lost our job. Something that was significant in our lives that we no longer have. And sometimes it's very difficult for us to cope with the stresses of life, or a toxic, unhealthy relationship, or our children are not behaving the way that we want them to behave. All these things can lead to poor mental health, right? Our inability to cope. But once we're able to have resilience, and that is your internal ability to cope and to manage your stress better, then we say, well, you have mental well-being and you're able to cope with life and contribute to the world in a more healthy way. Then we have exposure. So what might be some of the risk factors for mental health? And this could be our socioeconomic status, because if we don't have economic stability, so let's say you don't have a job or you can't manage your finances properly, then this could lead to feeling very overwhelmed, which can lead to chronic stress. We'll go into that in a little while. And it can also lead to feeling as though you're not coping or managing properly, right? Some of the circumstances that could lead to poor mental health is poverty, violence, crime, right? As we mentioned, criminals are not having the empathy for them. Inequalities, racism, discrimination, prejudice, all these different things, environmental deprivation, or increases risk of experiencing mental health conditions. All of this is risk factors for poor mental health, right? As well as it can be genetics. Your parents were depressed, so that depression stems in or it transfer onto you, right? So sometimes it's not just environmental, but it's also hereditary. We have different types of mental illnesses. And this is conditions that changes someone's emotions, thinking, or behavior, or a combination of all. So mental ill health is poor management of mental health. When you don't manage mental health adequately, it leads to mental ill health. And you all can ask any questions if I'm going too fast or if you need more clarification. Feel free to unmute your mic and ask questions, right? Oh, good. So, right. I said that fast, right? So we have different types of mental health, mental disorders. Any DSM-5, which is the diagnostic and statistical manual that all mental health professionals use to treat mental disorders, we have over 298 specific mental health disorders. And remember, we have persons in the world we have over 970 million persons who has different types of mental health disorders. Some of us have mental health disorders, but we don't know we have it because we have been high functioning. We live in and we functioning in a way that suits us, but we may have a mental health disorder, right? Or some of us kind of ashamed of it or don't want to see. And that is okay, right? It's how you really manage. We have different types. We have mood disorders, anxiety disorder, personality disorders. You'll hear the word narcissism, and someone who have antisocial personality disorder, they may not have empathy. You're hearing these things all the time, right? Psychotic disorders, right? Repetitive thoughts, eating disorders. So we have different types of disorders. We have bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, psychopathy or psychopaths, sociopaths. We have different types of mental health disorders as well as antisocial personality disorders. Now, someone who has schizophrenia, they do experience something called psychosis, and this is when they are distant from reality, right? And I have a little video to show you just an example of how someone who is hallucinating, what their experience might look like, right? So pay attention to this video that I'm going to show you here. And this person actually has schizophrenia. Can you imagine living with that every single day? You're just seeing different faces and people talking to you.
That is a normal, I'm going to say, I never really imagined that that is what is happening to a schizophrenic person.
Mm-hmm. That is what happens. They see faces in walls and cars. So sometimes when you, let's say, walking through the streets and you see someone talking to a person or they're talking to the wall, they are actually seeing faces and hearing voices as though we are having a discussion here.
But do they just have the visions or do they hear voices as well? Oh,
They have the visions and they hear voices. They hear voices like whispers, and then they see faces. Now, this person that I posted here actually have the disorder, and they see faces all the time, and the faces literally have names now. So their psychosis have names. So they name one, I think one is Kendrick or another name, and this person became friends with the different faces that they are seeing on a regular basis.
mhm.
And this is a reality for some people. So could you imagine living with seeing faces randomly popping up, hearing voices, seeing people coming out like it's normal, like you, like me and you?
So these images or whatever it is they see, could we take it that they are jinns or just what?
Well, it have a psycho-spiritual dimension to mental health, but also it is the mind, the brain is distorted. The reality of that person is distorted, and the brain is now creating, it has a chemical imbalance. And because of that, it's literally creating stories and narratives that is brought to life in the person's brain. So they're literally seeing people and talking to people, but the people are not there. Right? Some people see shadows. When I did some training in St. Anne's for some months, and one of my clients saw shadow people, and he would say, when I look out in the yard, I'm seeing people, and it's people behind the trees, and he's just seeing all these shadows. And this is his mind that is distorted. So his reality is not my reality. And this person actually murdered one of their parents. And the parents to them turned into an animal. And so he thought he was murdering an animal, but he really murdered his own parents and end up in sentence, right? So this is how poor management. I mean, it have persons who live a healthy life with schizophrenia. You could be working amongst persons who have schizophrenia, but their symptoms are managed. There are some medications that you can take for the hallucinations and the different types of effects or symptoms of schizophrenia. But it's something that it's very challenging to manage if you're seeing faces and hearing voices all the time. That's very difficult to manage. So some people, they'll see them even on the streets and they curl up in a corner and they just cannot manage with all of that, right? Because it's very overwhelming. So mental health disorders, even for the person who is currently battling their mental health disorder, is very hard for them. So sometimes it requires us to have a little patience with our family members or friends if they do have mental health, that if they were diagnosed with a mental health disorder, right? So what is the connection between mental health and Islam? Let's delve a little deeper into how Islam and mental health is linked, right? So before I jump into this, can anybody tell me what they think the connection between mental health and Islam might be? And anybody can say, no, there's no right or wrong answers. Just say from your perspective as a Muslim or having faith, what you think this means to you, mental health and Islam.
I don't know if Iman will, Iman, having Iman, and that's like you're not holding rancor and for anybody, so you're kind of trying to keep the peace.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're having Iman, you're having, trust in Allah. So when you have any challenges or you're faced with any challenges, you know that you're not alone, right? So that can help you in terms of coping with your challenges. Thank you so much for that, right? So how does Islam link to mental health? We build spiritual resilience because we pray 5 times a day and we trust in Allah. Whenever we are faced with any challenges, we know that this is a test from Allah and we trust in Him, and this helps us to navigate our stressful lives, right? Sometimes we have patience. Now, as Muslims, we must have patience. The verse is Sabr in 200 verses of the Quran speaks about having patience and understanding and know that Allah is always in control, right? We also believe in the unseen. So the evil eye, I look up the name of the evil eye jinn, which is the evil eye monster. It's not really Islamic, but this is known to be a spirit that, surrounds you when there is the jealousy, right? So we believe in the evil eye. Someone who jealous and envies you can actually put an evil eye on you, right? And this can cause harm because it's jealousy. this can cause harm and jealousy, right? We believe in spiritual possession. So spiritual possession is, as mentioned, jinns. So a jinn can enter somebody and cause them to behave in ways that is very antisocial, right? So tell me, do you think, based on the Islamic connection that we have, the Islamic philosophy or perspectives, do you think that someone who is mentally ill can actually be jinn possessed and not necessarily mentally ill?
Yes, I believe so.
Yeah. There is a link, there is a strong link between mental illness and possession, right? Because I've heard stories of persons climbing the wall and speaking in different languages. And so we know that does not always associate itself with mental health. And as Muslims, we understand that there is a link between jinns and mental health diagnosis, right? So even though we have all this information about the unknown and all these different things, there are some misconceptions about mental health in the Islamic community. Mainly, it's a taboo topic, right? So it's not something that everybody talks about. You won't hear it widely used in the Islamic community. And this is because it leads to embarrassments. Nobody wants to say that they are seeing things and hearing things. Nobody wants to say that they are depressed to the point where they cannot bathe or take care of themselves, right? Sometimes you fear the criticisms or the judgments of another person, and especially your social status. So let's say, for example, you are an imam and you have a mental disorder. You're not going to advertise that because you are supposed to be seen as mentally strong, as a leader, as someone who has this level of resilience. So you're not going to disclose that you have a mental illness because now you don't want anybody to judge you, right? So sometimes you don't want to always say you have a mental illness, right? Mental health is associated with being non-religious. Like, how could you have depression? You have to believe in Allah. You have to believe and be a proper Muslim, and you hear it all the time. So if you have depression or anxiety, it's as though you're not believing enough. Have you ever heard those things? Or you're not praying 5 times a day, that's why you have depression. But this is all myths, because you could have depression, but you believe in Allah. You could have depression and you are praying 5 times a day or more, right? But you have depression, you're doing everything that you need to do that is pleasing to your Lord. But mental illness is not really linked to religion. Is really linked to people, individuality, right? Many Muslims believe that today's mental health issues is a test from God, and so they don't really address it. They just see it as, well, I will overcome this, which is true, but sometimes they need support, right? If you go to a mental health professional, you might think that you have to go to somebody who is religious. You cannot go to a non-Muslim because they may not understand, and they may impose their beliefs on you, and they may undermine your Islamic beliefs. This is another myth. As a mental health professional, we do believe in respecting everyone's religious beliefs, and that is our ethical codes. So someone who is not a Muslim can empathize with you, can provide mental health intervention and support. It's as though you go to the hospital with a broken leg and you tell yourself, I need a Muslim doctor because a Christian doctor or someone who's not of my faith cannot see about my broken leg. It's not logical, right? And sometimes we go to an imam. I'm not saying you don't want to go. I'm not saying don't go to an imam, right? But some imams are not trained in mental health interventions. That is the truth. And they may mislead you based on the advice or based on the type of intervention. So you want to ensure that even if you go to an imam, that person has training in mental health interventions, because mental health interventions is a specialized type of training, and it's not just anybody can intervene, right? So you want to ensure that you're taking care of yourself in a way that is really beneficial to you, right? Or your family member. A mental illness is a manifestation of jinn possession. So some Muslims may believe that mental illness is jinns. It's not that you really have a disorder, but it has to be like a jinn or a spiritual blast, or somebody may have done something wrong. Mental illness is, I don't want to say it's part of your life, but it could be hereditary. You can get it from your parents. It's something that can come on based on stress. There's so many different risk factors that can lead to mental illness. That doesn't have to do with any type of jinn or spiritual intervention or inflictions, right? So in order for us to seek mental health interventions, we have to start looking at mental health in a way that is part of our holistic health approach and not always from a spiritual perspective. Now, it's good to include spirituality, but if you need intervention, you need to seek intervention from a trained mental health professional, right?
Excuse me, Salaam alaikum.
Well,
How
Ms.
do
Ma'am.
you detect or handle this like with a child? How could you detect something, mentally wrong or unstable with a child?
Well, that's a good question. Children, it's very difficult for children to verbally say how they feel because the language of children is really behavior, right? They aren't able to sometimes articulate their emotional state. So what you might want to do is observe behavioral patterns. Is the child aggressive? Is the child withdrawn? Is the child not interacting with their friends as they used to? Is the child staying inside? They don't want to play. So observe the behaviors, observe some of the things that the child is doing that might not align with who the child is if you know the child, right? So look at those behavioral patterns as opposed to the child coming and saying something is wrong with me. What the child might say things that that could lead to I need support, but most of the times children may lash out. They may start to fight more. You might see their grades dropping in school. You might realize that they don't really have much friends anymore, or they may have friends that is not really the healthiest types of friends, or they may have trouble finding and building friendships. So in different ways, children, they in different ways they express that they do need support and mental health support. One of the major things I saw when I work with children is the behavioral responses. A lot of children are very behaviorally expressive, so they may start lashing out and behaving in a way that is not appropriate. They may start using obscene language. They may start behaving in a way that is very aggressive, right? There is certain mental health disorders that children have that can also lead them to be aggressive, like conduct disorder. But most of the times, the children, you observe the behavioral pattern of the child. That is
Okay.
what I would say, right?
All right, but would you associate a child, a teenager, or a child who engages in cutting as mentally disturbed, as like
Yeah. Well, cutting could be seen in two different ways. Not every child, and this might sound a bit different, but not every child who is engaging in self-harming actually have a mental health disorder. Some children, they self-harm as a way to cope with their stressor. So self-harm could be a symptom of a larger problem, or it could be that they are coping, or it could be that they are following somebody in their environment, like a friend, because this actually is a reality in some schools. I worked in schools for years, and some children were cutting, and we recognized that their friends were cutting too, so they started to cut. They don't even know why they're cutting, right? So some children, they're just kind of copying their friends, and some children, they actually have uh, a challenge that they are trying to address, but they can't address. So the cutting is a way of crying out for help. Again, it's a negative behavioral approach. So they may cut themselves as a way to ask or seek help. Or they may start using language that, because that is part of the suicide attempts spectrum. So they may start saying things like, I'm not happy, or I don't like this, or you might start to hear a lot of negative language. Right? So pay attention to even the language that the children are using and the persons that they have around them. Right?
Okay, shukran.
Right. So, anybody have any questions? Thank you for those questions, actually. Right? So we're going to jump into stress. Stress is a big trigger for poor mental health management. Stress is normal. It's okay to have stress. But what happens is if you have too much stress, that is where we may develop some other challenges that is associated with stress, right? So what is stress? Stress is a state of worry or mental tension caused by a difficult situation. So you have a difficult situation and you are worrying about it, and you're mentally tense based on the situation. So this could look like you're having arguments with your significant other, or your children are misbehaving, or you don't have the financial resources to take care of yourself properly or your home. So all of this can cause stress, right? And so we have different types of stress. Some persons might associate chronic stress with depression or anxiety, but it's just you have chronic stress, right? Acute stress is everyday stress. So it's a short-term stress. So something you're waiting for a car, the car didn't pull up, so you're stressed out. Oh God, I don't know if I'll get a car on time. I want to go home. I'm tired, I'm hungry, and you're stressed in that moment, right? Acute stress can also be positive stress, where you're very excited to wait for some grade, or you're excited to go somewhere. And this is called positive stress, right? But it can also be negative if you have too much stress, if you have too much types of acute stress. So it can lead into chronic stress. And this is long-term stress that goes on for months and weeks, like you're just not coming out of the stress state, right? And then we have episodic acute stress. So this is when you experience acute stress on a regular basis. So you're always stressed out, there's always a problem, you always need to fix something. The stress is ongoing, right? And it could be linked to marital problems or financial issues or any type of challenge that you're having. So it does have different types of stress. But how does stress impact us? And this is the most important part of it. It's not that stresses are wrong, but how are we affected? And I'll tell you this, everybody is affected differently, and everybody deals with it differently. We can't go to the one-size-fits-all store to manage and treat stress. And this is why I have to give you a number of approaches today that will help you to manage stress, because it does the same. What might work for me may not work for you, because everybody different and our tolerance level is different, right? So when we stress out, what happens to the body when you're stressed out? So cortisol releases in the blood, and the cortisol is a stress hormone. This is releases, and when the stress hormone is very high, like you have high levels of stress hormones, right? It can raise your blood pressure, your sugar, right? It can also lead to depression, and it can lead to poor immune system, like an immune deficiency. That is why some people cannot eat when they're stressed out, or they overeat, right? It tips off that. It can lead to your liver releasing glucose, so the muscle will start to build up, because this is the fight, flight, or freeze response that your body is releasing when you're under stress. Your oxygen levels, it decreases its flow because your body ready to run. It's as though your body is getting ready to run from a pit bull out of a gate, right? So this is why your body prepares for that. And so it releases a lot of the cortisol in your body. It slows down your body. It slows down or even stops your digestion, right? And your body gets ready for action. And this is why it's hard to sleep. because your body now is pumped up and ready to go. So your brain is literally speeding. And this is why some of you all cannot sleep, because your brain is going at 100 kilometers per second, right? But how does all of this action affects our body? So the action affects our bodies in different ways. So for the brain, it's very difficult for us to concentrate because we have anxiety, or some of us have depression or irritability based on the amount of cortisol that is in our bloodstream, right? It can also affect our cardiovascular system, which is our heart and our blood vessels. It can lead to high cholesterol. It can lead to so this can also lead to risk of heart attack, right? Yes, Rabia, it can lead to problems with your menstrual cycle, right? For reproductive health, it can also lower your libido, which is your sex drive. So some persons, when they're under stress, they don't feel to have sex, or they just have no sex at all, right? It can affect your gut health. So it can affect even your nutrient absorption. Sometimes you're eating, but you're not gaining any weight, or you're overeating and you're just feeling like you're stressed. Stress can cause us to eat unhealthy food. So we might go for the greasy pie or the KFC or Royal Castle when we have high cortisol levels, right? Or hair loss. It can lead to hair falling out. So some of us might have a lot of hair loss when we're stressed out, right? Acne, we skin bursts out in buttons all over because our body has poor regulation. It has acid building up in your joints, right? Joint pain, muscle tightness. All of this is how stress affects your body, or should I say poor stress management. This is how it affects the different organs in your body. So stress is not just mental, it's physical and physiological when we look at it from a holistic perspective. So this is why we need management of stress, because we could save ourselves from different types of ailments if we learn to manage stress in an effective way, right? So this is why today I want to teach you how to do that. This is the different areas of your life that stress can affect. Your relationships with others, right? Your happiness. When we stress out, we tend to be more negative and pessimistic and depressed than usual, right? Money. When you're stressed out, you're frustrated, you have no money, it could affect your money because you may not feel motivated to work. If you're an entrepreneur, you may not feel motivated to build a business. It affects your career. So everything is interwoven, right? Yet life transitions, you might be transitioning from one age to the next. It affects that. You mightn't feel enthusiastic or excited about that. It affects your health. All these cardiovascular diseases, you're not eating properly, you're not sleeping properly, you're not bathing, you're not taking care of yourself. All of that affects your body, right? And your personal power. Some of us feel very powerless when we're stressed out, We feel like we don't have control over our lives. We feel as though our lives this is just how it is and how it have to be. Because stress makes us believe that our life is just wrapped around the stress. The stress is the nucleus of our lives. It's just in the middle of it. And we cannot propel and come out of that stressful state that we would have been in based on so much different factors. But I'm here to tell you that that is a myth, a mental myth, right? You can definitely balance and create homeostasis, which is balance in your body, and it can balance out the stress hormone cortisol with some happy hormones. And I'm going to give you the happy hormones in today's presentation, right? But let me stick a pin in stress addiction. What is stress addiction? Some of us are addicted to the cycle of stress. We are addicted to it. Addiction is not just drugs, or behavior, Sometimes we are addicted to being busy. We think that we associate busyness with productivity. So if I'm not busy, I'm not productive, right? Stress is a pattern of behavior where one consciously or unconsciously, I needed to see this. So sometimes you're doing this without conscience. You don't know that you're addicted to stress because you grow up this or your whole life has been, right? seeks out stress-inducing situations to experience the physical or emotional impact of stress. So you fear that if you stop being busy, you won't know what's left. It's like, I am just a person who has to go. I must be on the go, right? Because this is how you see your life as being a productive citizen or a productive member of your family. Your diary is so busy and you're secretly pleased. It's like, yes, guys, I'm a busy woman. No, I'm a busy man. You know, there's some people who just like to say they're busy, right? I have things to do, right? And this is also, if you are guilty of this, right? Some people, the dread time on their own. They don't want to do no leisure time. You don't want to go on the beach. You don't want to take your time because you're thinking you're wasting time if you do that, right? And some of us, we love the word busy. So someone asks you, so how was your day today? Well, I had a busy day. Stress as always. And you feel proud and smug that you are so occupied with things. So some of us feel empowered by being stressed out. We feel good. We feel like we're productive. We're doing something. But we might be doing something that is counterproductive to our mental health growth and advancement. We are addicted to the cycle of stress, which means our motivation to de-stress is not there. And this is why we don't take breaks, because taking breaks is associated with being lazy or not being productive or not doing what we need to do in society. And this can also lead us to burnout. But some of us wear burnout as a badge of honor. We think that being burnout means that we're doing something, which is a myth, by the way, right? So stress, and I'll go through this very quickly because we just had a lengthy discussion on how stress affects us, right? So I'll go through this quickly. So the long term, and I'm talking about chronic stress, bad stress here, how does it affect us physically? It leads to chest pain, exhaustion, headaches, dizziness. Some of us have high blood pressure, muscle tension, jaw tension. I'm sure if I ask some of you all to relax your jaws now, you may not even notice that you have tension in your shoulders and in your jaws and all these different areas, right? Emotionally, stress affects you because you're irritable, you're angry, right? Earlier when we talk about someone being easily triggered, so this is an emotional symptom of stress, anger, you're impatient, you're overburdened, you're anxious, you're nervous, your thoughts are racing, you can't switch off. So some of you all, you can't sleep in the night because you can't switch off your thoughts. You're depressed, you're uninterested in life, you have lost your sense of humor, you're just drained and depleted. This is emotional symptoms of stress, right? How does it affect your brain? Racing thoughts, negative thinking, poor judgment, poor concentration. You're forgetting everything. You have to write it down or else you will forget it, right? This is how it affects your brain. Constant worry and anxiety. All of this is the way the cortisol hormone is affecting your mental capacity, right? And of course, behavior. Your behavior is going to be affected. So you're snapping at people, you're biting your nails, right? You pick your itch in your skin, right? You're picking at your skin and all the buttons that you got from being stressed out. You're procrastinating, you're wasting a lot of time. You know you have things to do, but you can't get to it because you're preoccupied with scrolling on social media or talking to a friend or calling your family member. Everything that is unimportant, and you're not focusing on the important thing that you have to do, right? You start to use drugs. Some of you all, not you all here, but some persons, in order to cope with the stress, they pull out a cigarette or marijuana or they drink alcohol. All of this is behavioral symptoms of stress. So when we see the bars full up in Trinidad, we know that people are really stressed out in this country, right? And if you look at the drug prevention session I have, there's a lot of negative outcomes to using negative coping mechanisms for stress. So I have a question here for you guys, right? And of course, you all can do two things, unmute your mic or comment in the comment section. What do you say when you're stressed out? So stressed have a language. There's a way we speak when we're stressed out, right? What kind of language do you use when you're feeling overwhelmed with stress? I have some here, but can you all share with me some of the languages you use? Let me see this one. I'm fed up. Yes. Pressure in the camp.
I'm tired. I can't take it no more.
You can't take it no more. You're stressed out, eh? My neck. I work better under pressure. That is a common one I hear. I need pressure to work. I can't work when I calm, right?
All behind my neck hurting, man.
And yes, so your neck, and then this is the language that we use. Your neck hurting, you're working under pressure, your back, your foot. All of this is the language of
My
stress.
pressure high.
Your
Yeah, they're
pressure
raising
high.
the pressure.
You raise my pressure there.
You you raise my pressure there. I can't take this anymore, right? So these are the languages we use when we're stressed out. And what you think that does to the body? It sends a message to your adrenaline and your cortisol system that says you are stressed out. So you know what your whole stress system is going to do? It's going and release cortisol when you talk like this. When you say your blood pressure high, you're really raising your blood pressure, right? Because what happens, and I'm going to tell you how this thing goes. Our thoughts affect our feelings, and our feelings affects our behavior. So when we think about stress, we tend to feel stressed. We tend to send out a signal to our body, our immune system, that we are stressed out. And so our body starts to behave in a stressful way. And that is why sometimes your head hurts, your backache, because that is behavioral responses to stress. As you saw, we have different ways the body responds to stress: emotional, behavioral, cognitive, all these different ways. And so when you say your neck hurts and you're working under pressure, you're putting more cortisol hormones in your body. So you want to be mindful of even the language you use when you talk about stress, right? So stress is a normal part of life. Poor management of stress can lead us to feeling depleted and burnout. So it's really not the fact that you have stress, but how are you managing your stress, right? And we're going to jump into coping mechanisms here. So pay particular attention to how we cope with stress, right? Islamically, I wanted to kind of provide some Islamic context to coping with stress, inspired by the Quran and the Hadiths. Firstly, we have that acknowledge and embrace your feelings. Some of us don't like to acknowledge when we're feeling bad. We think that we just need to get over it or overcome it quickly. And that is a sign of strength. But a sign of strength is really crying, talking about your feelings, processing your feelings properly, and really coping and working through how you feel. When you do not acknowledge your feelings and you just cover everything up, you will eventually start to feel even more overwhelmed for after a long period of time. You won't feel the effects now, but for a long period of time, you're going to start to feel the effects, because what happens with mental health is it gets worse over time as opposed to just naturally getting better, right? And in Surah Baqarah, there is a verse that speaks to acknowledging your feelings and emotions, right? We have turn to Allah and remember He's always with us. I'm not going to read all the verses, right? Keep your body healthy. So there's different surahs and hadiths that signals that we need to take care of ourselves as Muslims, right? You want to maintain mental health by nurturing spirituality. Spirituality is a big part of mental health. Taking care of your mind, taking care of your body, knowing, right, that Allah is in control, right? Seek and visit experts when needed. This is another hadith that speaks about going to a mental health professional to seek support. So it's not or the imam or somebody that you trust. It's really about how you cope and treat it, because not everybody who goes to a specialist has a mental health disorder, right? Sometimes just talking about it helps. But you want to make sure that you're talking to somebody you trust and who is safe and who will be confidential and not go and spread your information to the community. That is also important, right? So, anybody have any questions? Feel free to type it in the chat, right? What is some of the ways that we can naturally cope with stress? These are our main hormones. This is the 4 main hormones that we can tap into to combat the cortisol hormone, right? The stress hormone that is released. We have our happy hormones, and this is how to hack them, right? So we have dopamine. So dopamine is your reward chemical, your bonding chemical, the love hormone. This is when you hug somebody. Yeah, this is actually what is released during sex, right? Safe sex, marital sex, you know how the thing goes, right? Listen to music, try something new, do something creative, you know, take something off your list. This is what is, no, I mean dopamine, sorry. Dopamine is a reward chemical. I'm seeing dopamine and I'm talking about oxytocin. What is going on? Right? So dopamine is your reward chemical. This is the part of the brain that actually feels good. So this is the part of the brain that when you do something that makes you feel good, you tap into that. So listening to music, if that makes you feel good, or the Quran or an Islamic lecture, if those things make you feel good, you are releasing dopamine, right? Try something new. Don't do the same thing over and over. Go and do something new. Try some kind of new sport, or watch a different show, or read a different book. All these things is excitement, right? Do something creative. And all of this is releasing your dopamine, and it makes you feel good. And the more you feel good is the less stress you feel, right? So you want to jump into your oxytocin, your love hormone. Again, this is released. I was explaining that for dopamine, but this is released during sexual intimacy, breastfeeding, hugging, doing anything intimate, spending time with your friends, showing affection. All these things, the oxytocin releases naturally, and it makes you feel really, really connected to people. One of the things with stress is it makes you feel isolated. It makes you feel depressed and like you can't interact. But oxytocin say, here's what, we have people, and when you bond with people, there's a chemical that releases when you bond. We have serotonin. And this is why we need to exercise, because it makes you, it changes your mood, right? So if you want to be in a good mood, go into the sun, take some sunlight, practice meditation. Meditation could also be praying too, staying focused and trusting in Allah, doing tahajjud, right? Eat a healthy meal. I spoke about your diet. When you are stressed out, your diet is really poor, right? So you want to ensure that you're eating all your greens and all your vitamins. All of that impacts your cortisol levels. So endorphins, this is your natural pain relievers. So you want to take a hot bath, listen to create music or art, try yoga, laughter. When you laugh, all of your endorphins are released when you laugh. You hear a good joke, you know, you're enjoying yourself. All of this is your happy hormones that you can naturally, Allah would have created this for us. And so we can tap into this when we are really stressed out. So this is our normal ways of functioning, right, guys? And I have a prescription for you guys. And the name of the prescription, let me just move this up. The name of the prescription is the Now prescription. The Now prescription stands for nutrition, oxygen, and work. And nutrition is because when we tackle in stress, we want to tackle stress holistic. Because as again, mental health is holistic health. So when you're trying to manage stress, you have to manage stress through the different facets of stress: physical, mental, and emotional. The N is nutrition. Eat healthy. And I want to challenge you guys to eat healthy. So eat proteins, get your nice meats and your vegetables and healthy fats at every meal. Try to eat something healthy. This will help you to manage stress in a physical way, right? You want to get your oxygen. So take deep breaths. Some of us need to just take time to breathe. Slow down. We live in a fast-paced environment where we always on the go. We running. We had this to do. We had errands to run. We had this to do, that to do. But sometimes it requires us to slow down, you know, and take time to inhale and exhale. So practice breathing exercises daily. This is a daily thing. So after Fajr, just sit down and you take a nice little breath and you inhale and you exhale, right? You can do this in different times throughout the day. and just ensure that you have enough oxygen that allows your brain to process the information and the things that is happening. This will help you to de-stress, right? For your emotional, W stands for work. So to regulate your emotions, what helps for emotional regulation? Because when you're stressed out, your nervous system is in a state of dysregulation. So in order to start regulating your nervous system, because remember, your brain is attached to all your nerves. So once your brain is not focused and concentrated, it tips off, your whole nervous system is in a disarray. So in order for you to start back to balance that, you want to take a walk, feel connected, take a stretch, move your hand, move your feet, and start walking and doing your little exercises, right? This will literally help. This is a prescription I'm giving to you. It's called the Now prescription that you can implement now with a breath, and you can start looking into eating differently. We have other techniques, right? Changing your perception and expectation. Sometimes it's how we look at things. We might think this person don't like me, or we have to do this for people. No, sometimes it's us just changing your perspective on outlook of your situation, right? Break jobs and tasks into manageable parts. You don't need to do everything today. Take a break. Do 2 things today. Manage yourself. You need to manage your environment. This helps to really manage stress, right? Please say no to people. You can do this for me. No. Practice the art of saying no, and do not explain your no. Just say no, right? Do not compromise your values. Schedule time for yourself. Stop being addicted to stress. Take some self-care moments, right? Avoid drugs, avoid coffee and energy drinks and all these different unhealthy ways to manage stress. Take some deep breaths, exercise, go and seek mental health support if you feel you need that. Write in a journal, talk to somebody you trust. These are some ways that you can really manage your stress levels, okay? These are some apps you can use. Most people have a smartphone. You can use your smartphone. There's different apps. There's Complete Relaxation, which has meditation, right? Mindfulness app, Calm. This is another way to, and it have YouTube too with all this information. All of this on YouTube, right? There are meditation for everyone. So this might be meditation, but meditation is really to calm your mind. It's really not a religious practice, although we have religious groups that use it, but this is really to calm your mind, right? So it's not really that, it's not that you're using anything that is un-Islamic, but you really want to just calm your mind and to really process things differently, right? Well, you could be addicted to caffeine, right? So you could be addicted to caffeine, Sister Julian, Sister Rabia, right? So you have to look at that because caffeine is a drug. It's what we call a stimulant drug. So it speeds up your nervous system. It keeps you alert, but it also can make your whole body crash and feel as though you're so exhausted and you can't really function, right? So as much as it speeds you up, it can slow you down. So you want to manage it. That is a negative coping mechanism right there. And energy drinks too, right? So YouTube has a lot of resources. Look it up, Look it up, Rabia, right? YouTube have a lot of resources that you can use. You can literally type in all of these things and find it on YouTube. So you use your social media platforms to release and to calm your cortisol levels, right, guys? This is so important. 90% of what you are stressing about right now won't even matter a year from now. Take a deep breath, right? The things that we stress about can you remember anything you're stressing about in a major way 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 3 months ago, 1 month ago? What even happened 1 month ago? Sometimes we need to really refocus we need to refocus and really pay attention to what is the important things in life. Some of us stress about every little thing, and we need to really focus on, is that worth my time and attention? And start really focusing on things that matters. Yeah, because this is you in the middle, and you must take care of yourself physically, emotionally, socially, intellectually, and spiritually in order to find homeostasis or balance in life. And this is how you lead a healthy, holistic, stress-free lifestyle. And this is the end of my presentation for today. You can, or I want to provide you with a resource kit. I will send it to Fimba, and so he can share it with everyone. I'll send you this Find KTT app, which is an app that is a mental health resource. It's free services for anybody who needs mental health intervention. We also have the National Alcohol and Drug Abuse Prevention Program, who has a treatment information request form that you can locate if your family members are negatively coping through alcohol and drugs. We have rehabilitation centers, Alcoholic Anonymous, the smoking cessation clinics. There are hosts of mental health resources that you can access free of charge in these different organizations. So I want to send you that, as well as some I have a stress management handbook, a virtual journal for persons who cannot access a physical journal, mandala exercise. It's online painting. It really helps you to kind of refocus and to kind of, when you want to do something that is self-care oriented and you feel like you don't want to go to the beach or come out your house, you do things in your house, right? And mindfulness activities. So all of this I will send to you in a package, so that you're able to continue your stress management journey and to live a healthier, more holistic life. So thank you, everyone, for participating in today's session. Do you have any questions at this time or need any clarification? I get that as a no.
Thank you very much for this session. I thought I wasn't going to be able to join, but I enjoy your sessions so much that I had to come on.
Thank you so much. It's always a pleasure. It's always a
This
pleasure, and I
session
really
was most
appreciate it.
edifying. Session was most edifying. Shukran, Jazakallah.
Thank you guys so much, Jazakallah, for coming on and for asking questions and for engaging. I really hope that you all learned from this session and could implement some of what we went through today. Thank you so much, everyone, and for really, being a part of this session. You are a big part of this session, and thank you for inviting me to spread some information here today. Right, so I will hand back the mic. You're welcome. I'll hand back the mic to Fimba. Oh, wait.
All right, Jazakallah, beloved, for another wonderful interactive session on behalf of the Wazirate of Public Relations and Dawah. Also, the Imam sends his regards and salams. I want to thank you for taking the time to educate us on this topic of mental health, because it is indeed a taboo subject within the Muslim community, and it's something that we need to continuously shed light on. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala continue to bless you and reward you. One thing I would like for you to do, if you have it, kindly share your social media handles so that those in attendance can see and follow you on TikTok, Facebook, and Instagram, inshallah. So if you have it, I would like you to post it so that they can follow you.
I don't have it at the moment, but I can share my name and I don't have like the links. But I can share my name so that anyone who needs further support or information, feel free to message me. Feel free to message me and I will be very happy to help or to provide support, right? So this is my name on Facebook. For those of you who are not my friend on Facebook, let me see if I can share my TikTok real quickly here. Right, so this is my TikTok name. I'm going to share it quickly in the chat. right? So you all can follow me on TikTok and on Facebook. And when you follow me on TikTok, in my bio, I have the link to all my social media handles. So feel free to reach out to me if you need any questions answered or any support, or if you need further information on what we discussed. I will be very happy to provide you with any information as I possibly can. Or if not, I'll call upon my network of support, right? So either way, you're going to get the support.
All right. MashaAllah. So as we end this session, as we started with the dua, we end with dua. We end with Surah Al-As. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Wal asr inna al-insana lafi khusr. إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت وأستغفرك وأتوب إليك. Beloved brothers and sisters, we look forward to seeing you all next month, inshallah, for another edition of our monthly lectures. May Allah continue to bless you all and keep you safe. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam.
Welcome, assalam.
Walaikum assalam.
Walaikum assalam.